GD is going to turn 4 years old this year, and during that time the game has gone from a tiny 2D mobile platformer into one of the biggest indie games with one of the most active mobile communities for its size in the world. GD has a lot of dramatic history, from unforgettable mysterious players to famous mega collabs that have attracted millions of views. Now, with GD pushing its 4th year, a lot has happened, and on more than one occasion history has repeated itself, just in a different form. Throughout this game's history, there have been parallels, coincidences and weird occurrences that I for one have found very interesting and mysterious. So today, we're going to be covering 5 mysterious and weird coincidences in Geometry Dash. Now, this is a pretty abstract video in my opinion, and a lot of the parallels I've picked up on here you may have a different take on. Also, for each entry I've picked 2 entities and a number of parallels between the two. Some of these parallels, especially those concerning players, it could be argued were intended and not coincidental. However, largely the relationships between each of these entities is by chance and surprising. If you have a different take on what I'm about to discuss, feel free to drop it in the comments and I'll have a read of all of them, but remember that this is for entertainment purposes only and shouldn't be taken too seriously. This video contains opinions that you may deem as speculation, and if you do, leave your opinions for me to read and take it with a pinch of salt. With that said, let's dive into the video. So to get us started, I have Bloodlust and Yatagarasu, 2 contemporary extreme demons, so you can get an idea of how this video will work for each entry. Of course, on the surface, these 2 share the parallel of being red extreme demons. However, they both shared quite a lot of similarities on their journey. Both of these levels were started at the same time roughly, between March and April 2016, and they were both designed to be 3-minute hell-themed extreme demons. While the hell theme in big levels is quite common, the extra long length was something not really seen before then. Obviously, both these levels were designed to be the hardest levels in the game, but both were started by early Bloodbath victors as a direct result of their Bloodbath victory, it can be argued. Bloodlust was obviously initiated by Quasar as he became the first to beat Bloodbath, and Yatagarasu became the spiritual successor to Bloodbath as this huge mega collab by a large team of creators to be verified by Riot and become the hardest level. Both levels had these original verifiers drop their respected level too. The 2 eventual verifiers had crossover with each level as well, especially with Truster, who at one point was practicing both Yatagarasu and Bloodlust. Both levels were verified under controversial circumstances too, with both being subject to nerfing debates at one point. However, Yatagarasu's nerfing debate was much bigger. But subsequently, both Nobbleboy and Truster had to deal with accusations that they ruined their respected levels. Bloodlust was verified at a similar time period, being within the first quarter of 2018, whereas Yatagarasu came out a month before in 2017. And because Bloodlust has only just come out, the tangible parallels stop here. However, it does seem like Bloodlust may go the same way as Yatagarasu, when it will be moved to 2nd and it will fall down the top 5 quickly from there. As with both levels, early victors have claimed that the number 2 respected demon for each level was harder. Nubas and Espectro are 2 players who shared a number of overlaps, so much so that it actually prompted speculation that Nubas might have an alter ego. If you'd like to know more about this, then you can go and watch my 8th GD Theories episode discussing whether or not Nubas had an alternate account. Espectro was one of the main players discussed because of the similarities they shared. While Espectro was pretty much exclusively a creator, Nubas also had a prolific creating side, and both adopted very similar styles in the latter stages of their creating careers, and this peaked with Nubas's level Cosmic Rage, which was incredibly similar to Espectro's last few levels. Speaking of similar levels however, nothing quite illustrates this like the similarities between Fexty and Sakupan Hell. Both of these levels were medium in length and much shorter than the common demons of 1.9, which were all relatively consistent in length at about between 1 minute and 20 seconds and 1 minute and 40 seconds. They also were both very odd releases for each creator, as both were quite clearly hacked and stood little chance of getting rated, though Fexty was rated for a brief period. Both were released not too far apart from each other and were the hardest demons in the game at the time, both being harder than Cataclysm. Each was a strange step up in difficulty for each creator, and now, although this has nothing to do with either player, both these levels have been re-verified and are rated Extreme Demon. As I explained in the GD Theories episode, it's now very unlikely that these players were the same person. However, this makes the coincidences and parallels they shared even stranger to consider. This next one is my personal favourite one, as history is repeating itself a year on right before our very eyes in an interesting way. Bausha Vortex and Hyperparachism share a number of weird similarities given their relative difficulties for their period in GD, and their recent timings of release. For this entry, I want you to consider the current ultra famous top 10 red extreme demon of each period. With Bausha Vortex we're talking about Bloodbath, which was still in the top 5 at the time. For Hyperparachism we're talking about Yatagarasu, bearing in mind that Bloodlust was released after Hyperparachism. Both Hyperparachism and Bausha Vortex were verified at similar points in their respective year, being around February time, and obviously both are purple themed electric 9 circles levels. Both have been extremely difficult for Circles levels too, and this is the main thing I find interesting. Both trumped the famous red themed Extreme Demon of the time I referred to in the beginning. Bowser Vortex was placed at a staggering 4th, ahead of Bloodbath, which was still in the top 5. This was extremely impressive for a Circles level, as these days players don't give that much emphasis to the difficulty of Circles levels because they stand less chance of being rated than standard levels. Hyperparachism is experiencing a similar case. It has been named top 4 worthy, meaning it is most likely harder than Yatagarasu, the other top 5 hell theme Extreme Demon at the time I told you to consider at the beginning. Both originally had set verifiers, but were picked up by somebody else, which led to remarkably fast verification. Temporum quickly verified Bowser Vortex in 2017 ahead of End Level, and End Level has now made short work of Hyperparachism in place of Sonic's. Also, it came around the same time of a new hell-themed Extreme Demon going at first place on the list. Bowser Vortex came shortly after Yatagarasu was verified and placed first on the list, and Hyperparachism came a short time before Bloodlust was verified and placed on the list. The original verifiers were very fast to make progress on it as well, with End Level beating Bowser Vortex almost immediately, as Sonic's racing to 94% on Hyperparachism. Both have managed to give Circles levels a place in the top 5 at the points they have been released, and are keeping the Circles series relevant as a result. Crazy Man 50 and Zobros have a lot of parallels and coincidences between them, so much so that I was planning on making a separate video about it. I firmly believe that Crazy is the absolute successor to Zobros, being exactly the kind of player Zobros was in the current community. Both started out relatively unknown for a fair amount of time, but constantly grinded demons on stream. Neither posted fail compilations or emotional intros or anything like that, and for the large part of their careers there's been very little personality involved as opposed to just showcasing GD achievements. Both also had creating streaks alongside their playing careers, which would eventually end up going above and beyond to define them further. Both have verification videos on their channel around 1 million views, and interestingly, they both have a very similar number of total lifetime channel views at around 17 million, although Zobros has more subscribers for this view tally with around 13,000 more. Their creating careers have peaked with hugely famous levels, but 2 of their levels stand out with similarities. Both Acropolis and Black Blizzard were unique black-themed demons who used timing as their main element for difficulty. Both became extremely hard, revered challenges of their time in GD, and were very memorable for their song choice, originality and gameplay. The two share a lot of parallels, and it makes you wonder if Crazy has been inspired by Zobros at any point during his career, as if any player out there is a modern day Zobros, it's Crazy Man. Right, so I saved the best and probably the most obvious for last. Riot and Cyclic are 2 of the game's most famous players, and the similarities have been plentiful throughout all stages of their careers. A lot of this came to be more competition than coincidence, but there have been some very strange parallels that have emerged between the two that make their rivalry and friendship so special in GD history. Let's start with their colours in the beginning. Both used pink and blue icon sets with some relation back to Neptune, and both began as star grinders before they got their popularity. Obviously, both made their names beating Cataclysm too, which was a huge jewel in their empires back then. Both moved on to mega collabs after, with Riot planning Bloodbath and Cyclic verifying Galactic Fragility. As a side note, both also used the Bunny texture pack by Gelt. Soon after, both laid the foundations for their masterpiece projects. Bloodbath and Sonic Wave had a lot of similarities, while the majority of them were in response to one another. It still makes for very interesting reading. Both were based off the style and difficulty of each of their best achievements, being Cataclysm to inspire Bloodbath and Poltergeist to inspire the style for Sonic Wave being on 9 Circles levels. Both have aged well in terms of difficulty and are still relevant now, with both gaining rebirths that are still the hardest demons in the game today, being Bloodlust and Sonic Wave Infinity. Fast forward 6 months, and with Cyclic's return in 2016, A Bizarre Phantasm also comes into the mix with lots of similarities to Bloodbath. At this point we need to consider the Eastern community, namely the Koreans, and the Western community, as 2 different hemispheres and communities. Riot and Cyclic were each hemisphere's best player, and Bloodbath and AVP were each hemisphere's hardest level, built by teams predominantly of that nationality. Both were very similar in difficulty tier, being extreme demons that placed 1 and 2 on the list, and as opposed to a parallel, it was quite symbolic that Riot's mega collab was a red one and Cyclic's was a blue one. Fast forward 3 months again, and we have the Hellzone and Red World Rebirth coming to the mix, and this is when the most crazy, unplanned occurrences start. Both worked in a team of 4 to rebirth a hell-themed level by mysterious Korean players in the form of Son and Sari, who themselves had a good relationship. And both were originally made before 1.9 and were viewed to be impossible. Both were top 5 in difficulty, and after releasing their respective levels, the 2 levels both damned each player's career. The Hellzone led to Cyclic's confession and the fall of his empire, and Red World Rebirth led to Riot's first major bout of inactivity, from which it can be argued he's never really recovered. Both returned to the game eventually, but then faced finger pains from playing too much and had to take extended breaks again. Now, both are a fraction of what they once were in 1.9, but have united to create Cosmic Cyclone, the new upcoming Sonic Wave sequel. These players constantly shared so much, making their rivalry the biggest and best in GD history. So there were 5 cases of weird coincidences between certain things and people in Geometry Dash. While some were more speculative than others, it is strange to think just how much overlap there is in the community after nearly 4 years of this game growing and developing. I thank you very much for watching, and I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, please help it out by smashing that like button, and if you're new around here, if you could consider subscribing and checking out some of my other videos, then it would really help me out a lot. Thanks a lot guys, I'll see you all soon.